Okay. Aloha kako. Let me move this out of my way. Okay. Hi, aloha kako. My name is Tangaro, and nice to have you spend your hour with us. We have a little treat. Um, this will go for an hour, and if you need to leave at that point, we just mahalo your presence and your interest in growing a discussion. But our presenter, Bojack Keys, said, yeah, we can go a little bit after the hour 15 minutes, hour 30 minutes. So if you want to, linger on, by all means do. My name is Taupori Tangaro, and I do all kinds of stuff in the university system. And one of the great opportunities I have is to create intersections for our indigenous arts to inform our leadership, indigenous leadership development. It's a particular kind of leadership. Indigenous leadership it's not like other forms of leadership. There's something that's familiar with indigenous leadership worldwide with indigenous peoples. It always involves the ancestors. So the decision making has to include the ancestors, and it has to include the children yet to come, the generations yet to come. It is largely, and when we say ancestors, we're not talking about just the blooded ancestors. We're talking about the environmental and the phenomena, the universal ancestors. So it's the entire universe is incorporated into the decisions we make to advance the well-being of indigenous peoples. Art is huge in keeping the spirit engaged in the work that we do. And art, as it relates to the spirit, is worldwide with all kinds of people. You find it all kinds of people have art and spirituality in close intersections. So Mōkaulele is the name given this platform to bring together our indigenous artists, share their language that they've created, and then and make opportunity for that language to feed into the larger narrative, at least as it relates to the indigenous well-being here in Hawaii. And because Hawaii is in the center of the Pacific and Hawaii is home to many other indigenous, this kind of movement benefits all. There's not one kind of people, indigenous or otherwise, that do not develop from or do not benefit from these kinds of discussions. So without further ado, I'm going to go and put my glasses on, and I'm gonna get this share screen going, and we'll begin there. So we're gonna have the discussion, and then if you have questions, we can put it in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer some of those questions. We won't probably answer all of them, but the chat will be saved and will be forwarded to Bojack, and then Bojack can, if you leave your email within that chat, then he can contact you if he so has the time, and you can continue the discussion there. Anything else? And this is our last in the series. And right now I'm competing with the person that's cleaning our roof. So I hope there's not too much sound that's coming through. Bojack, let me go here. Slide 2. Okay, Bojack Kiʻi. Aloha, first of all, Bojack, and what do you like I call you? Bojack, Kiʻi, Imua, what?
Imua is fine, Bojack
Imua
is fine, it doesn't matter.
Okay, and then, let's begin with this hua. So the hua is really the beginnings of this movement of yours. Can you share with us, Bojack, at what point in your conscious memory you began to that you began to I don't want it to go ahead of me, that you began to become aware of the art, the aesthetic form?
So first of all, I want to thank you and your staff for having me on this platform and allowing me to share my work and my story, and then everybody at home signing up and supporting me. I really appreciate that. But yeah, so The first time that I started doing anything probably with my hands that I could really remember was making fishing lures with my dad. Big game fishing lures for tuna and marlin. And it I was just addicted to it, making the lure, taking it on the ocean, fishing with my dad. And it all the way to adulthood, I made fishing lures, and then it it just turned into this slowly. But it started with fishing. That was my connection, was fishing.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Now, at what point you began to investigate beyond dad, beyond the fishing
Mm.
lure? We call
Mhm.
that the ha'alele, the point you began to step into your own journey
Mm.
into this language system we call the arts.
So, like I said, with fishing, I was connected with our ancestors and the water, my environment, and I felt proud to be a fisherman, but I always wanted to wear a fishhook.
Uh-huh.
And I worked with mother of pearl, so I decided to carve me a fishhook. Actually, backtrack. I went to a gallery and tried to purchase one, and it was really expensive. And I said, you know what? I can I can make my own. And so I went home and I tried and tried and tried, and many failures. Then I had one that was really nice. And then I didn't know how to lash it. I
Ah,
didn't know how to put cordage on it. And so my journey began with books and trying to learn from there, from Bishop Museum, actually, and taking trips to Bishop Museum and learning about the lashing and the cordage and the fishhook.
okay, my ka'i. So again, the hua began with your dad. Very functional. With the hooks, and then your next step into was, like, interestingly, was the hook itself, and you're able to make the hook, but then all the other things that made it, wearable. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
that's great. So this huakai is this part of the journey that now now there's these challenges,
Mm.
that you have to break through. Um, when did you find, and then, there's highlights, and then there's, the ups and downs of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that with all artists, it's like that with all leaders. At what point did you realize that art, I don't want to use the word art, we don't even have a Hawaiian word for art, but it's the closest thing we have in English to describe, the emotion that comes with it. At what point in your journey did you realize that this, what you were doing, was not topical, that it was affecting your deep marrow, your deep inner core?
Mm.
At what point in this journey, when you were teaching yourself how, and all of these, that you realize, like, whoa, this is not a surface calling, it's doing something to my inside? Can you give us a date?
Actually, it was in 2010.
See.
I I I I was gonna purchase mother of pearl shells from this haole lady, Annie. I went to Annie. She saw my work. She didn't want to accept money, and we kind of hit it off. And then, oddly enough, my Dremel busted, and she's a jeweler, and she wanted to gift me a Fordham, which is a lot better than a Dremel, So I said, okay, I'll take it. I didn't want to take it, but I needed it. So she pulled it back and says, under one condition. And I said, what? She says, you need to go to Ho'ea up in Waimea and show them your work.
Ah.
And and I taught long and hard, and I said, oh, nobody saw my work. I didn't want to show my work. Only my family did. But I needed it. So I went and I grabbed my stuff, and I agreed with her, and I promised her, and I went up to Waimea. 15 minutes later, we're down in Waikoloa, and I knocked on the Pico Gallery at Ho'ea, and Jeffrey answered the door, and I told him that I needed to show them my work. And he says, well, you know, they're in a board meeting. And so he says, he'll go and check. So he opened up, he went in and he says, you know, they're in the middle of a board meeting, but they would want to see your work, maybe 2 minutes, 5 minutes. And I said, okay, because I promised someone that I have to show them my work. So I went in there. They were actually in a board meeting. They were losing money from the Anna grant. They needed someone from the community to teach lashing and cordage. And I walked in. I didn't
Bam.
know what the meeting was about, but I opened my case with all of my work, and they were floored. They were going to lose this grant. But so 2 minutes turned into 2 hours. I left there signing W-2s, and that was my first series of classes that I taught. They didn't know. They said, who's your kumu? I said, I have no kumu. You know, I taught myself, and at that moment, I kind of knew that it was bigger than me.
Great. So that isn't it interesting? The huaka'i, the actual journey in this development. You know, you meet Annie, and Annie, you know, you have no relationship to Annie biological, but
Nope.
then she presents an opportunity, and then she presents a challenge that comes with that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, this is sounding like a myth, you know, watching like Lord of the Rings or something. You always meet people on the journey. It's like Hi'iaka. She always meets the people she needs on the journey. And some of those people are challenging. Some of those people are obstacles that make her puncture through. And then some of those people are just, you know, they just advance it. You go to Ho'ea, they need you just as much as you need them.
Exactly.
And then that's the huaka'i. In short, the huaka'i. Now, the ho'ina, ho'ina means to come back, you know, as a result of this leg, because the journey never ends. They're just legs of journey. It's like a canoe. You know, it just doesn't have just one journey. There's multiple journeys. So in this space and time, if you could put your finger on one thing, what is your journey, your personal journey from fish hooks with dad to Ho'ea to Bojack, as we know Bojack? If you were able to put your finger on one thing, what would you say is a contribution you're making because of this journey to your community?
Well, you know, I don't like the term arts and crafts. I believe our people did fine, usable, functional art. And I want to step the arts and crafts. I want it to be fine art, not even art. It's like I told you earlier. It hasn't. At first, I wanted to start making good, beautiful things. Now, it's my language. It's how I speak. It's become part of me. And if I can help one person, you know, you always hear that one person, but I was sparked by books and our kupuna's work that I said, how did they do that? You know, and when people see my work, I want them to say, how did he do that and why did he do that? Yeah. So I want to challenge people to actually step it up, you know?
Yeah. You know, that questioning is such an important feature in indigenous lifeways, you know, and for some reason we've been convinced through colonization that Hawaiian people don't ask questions. They do, just in a different way. And a lot of those questions are very, very internal. Why did they do this? How did they do it? When did they do it? You know, and it's the questions that's driving the next journey of that canoe. It seems like once we get the answer, we park the canoe. It's the questions that make us want to get on the canoe and journey. And so without further ado, we're going to take you, audience, we're going to be taking you into some of his images of the stuff that he's made. And he's just going to share with us whatever is necessary. I think what is important in breaking away from the fact, from craft versus functional art. Well, I guess number one, we gotta find a new word. Instead of saying we don't like it, we should just create something that we do like. So let's do that.
Yeah.
But you know, um, the idea that behind the things that are created, there's a story. The story comes from a human being. Therefore, the story has a genealogy. The genealogy is connected to a space, and therefore, there's this whole universal genealogy in this one article. And sometimes that doesn't transfer when these items are mass produced. You have this beautiful piece, but the story doesn't come with it. Not to say that one is better than the other, but these days we need a little, we need a little bit more. We need less items with more power. And I think the power comes through the story. So why don't we let Bojack share with us some of his stories behind of these pieces. Take it away, buddy.
Okay. So the piece on the right, the bigger one of the two with the grooves, that was the first piece of, I don't call a fishhook adornment. It's a fishhook. We wear it, but I guess it's turned into adornment. But that piece I studied in the arts and crafts for Bishop Museum, and I actually created that at Ho'ea. That was my first adornment. And so that was a half of a fossilized ivory chunk that I had, cut it in half, and handed half of it over to my kumu, Stacy. Stacy Gordine, master carver. We collided at Ho'ea. And he has pushed me every step of the way. So we created his bracelets, and that actually I'm wearing it right now. And that's a very special piece for me. And then the cuff is probably the last piece of adornment that I made recently. And that is a whole bunch of memories. My father and my brother both passed. We all hunted from when we were little kids in the mountains for pigs. And so that's made out of pig tusk. And my dad has tusk in there, and also from my brother. My sister-in-law, my brother passed. She just wanted to clean everything out. She just wanted to move on. And she was tossing out all of his pig tusks. And I went to her and she gifted it to me. And then with my pig tusk, I had enough to make this cuff, but it took me, I had this for a long time. And because I knew I could do it physically, but I didn't know about emotionally. And that piece was very, very healing for me. I thought I grieved. They passed years ago, but man, I cried and cried and cried on my bench, and then laughed. And so that bracelet right there holds so much mana, memories. It's everything for me. It's my life up till this point. It really does. It really is.
So it's interesting. You have these two pieces. One of them reflects a challenge.
Yep.
You use the word conflict. I think, did you say conflict? You were at each other, and
Yeah.
it's just challenging. And that's interesting because sometimes we want the mentor that is warm and fuzzy, and that's necessary. But
Yeah.
sometimes you need the one that's right in your face and is going to push you the way a mother and a father cannot push you.
Yeah.
And they're going to.
He's a good mentor. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And then this piece, interesting, how you didn't know you had grieving still left in you until you
Yep.
began. I like that you spoke about the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, especially in the university system, we're trained as soon as you enter into the public school system in kindergarten to remove the emotion from the day-to-day dealings. To remove it is one thing, to channel it is another. And I'm finding as I'm getting older that we need to channel it,
Yeah.
and not eradicate it, because it is a huge part of how we relate to that world that we live in, that fabric that we live in. Okay, great. Let me Go here. Okay, what's the story behind this? These pieces.
So the first year that I met Stacy, of course, I was into fish hooks, and he knew that. Actually, my first class that I ever gave, he sat in, and I was so afraid. But anyway, he was supposed to teach the next course the following year at Hoya, but he said he wasn't because he knew I wasn't going to enroll. And so when the faculty and all the students, they loved him, they said, why aren't you going to come? And he says, Beau's not coming. So if you want me to come, you have to get Beau to come. And so they all came to me, they pressured me, and I said, look, I guess I have to come, you know. And so he says, great. He says, but I don't want to see a fish hook. When I come back next year, I want to see a project that you're out of your comfort zone. And so I went into my books and I found these kupe'e'ea, turtle shell bracelets that I've never seen before, only in the museum, you know. And from a photo, I sat down and figured it out and actually made my cuffs. And these are a little bit more refined ones that has come along out of it. It gave birth at Ho'ea. And it's still, till today, it's really my signature pieces, you know.
Okay. What kind of materials?
This is Hawaiian hardwood, so uhi uhi, kawila, and fossilized ivory.
Okay.
Traditionally, which is a word too that gets me sometimes, it's made with turtle shell. Everyone says, you can't make them. And I said, why? They said, because your ancestors made it with turtle shell. And I said, well, I have wood. You know, why can't I use wood? You know?
Yeah.
So it really started from there. And that really, you know, and the funny part was when I gave him my project, he laughed. And I said, why were you laughing? And he says, I'll tell you later. So after session was over, he went back into his camera. 5 years prior, he was at the museum and he saw the same bracelets and he tried to make them back in Aotearoa and he couldn't. So after session, him and we all made bracelets again. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
It's amazing. What an amazing journey those pieces hold.
Yeah.
You know?
And then, so, you know, and again, the totem that comes from that memory is this. So whenever you look at this, you're, you know, and the great thing is, you know, we talked about earlier, the indigenous leadership has, you know, is as much ancestral as it has to do with the progeny that's coming, you know, through us. You know, our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren will inherit items such as this. And hopefully the stories will continue. You know, it's like the dances that we inherit. You know, the dances that came with stories are the ones that are more sustainable. They're not because they're just not choreography. They're just choreography that holds a larger story. And so, you know, here's the piece again. You know how the human story is being giving birth through these physical, tangible pieces. Okay, here we go.
So the kupe'e, I started carving these because of memories that we had with my dad and my mom. So whenever we had small moon, we would go down to my dad's workplace down in Maunalani, and they were huge kupe'e. But they make me laugh because my dad would yell at us because we're making big noise. And he'd tell us, shut up, you know? And then if you hear in the distance, you can hear them rolling off the rocks into the sand. But he's making more noise than us, you know? And so these are just deer. So our kupuna would wear them to mark royalty. They would wear single carved ivory kupe'es. And that's something that I wanted to bring back and carve it out of basalt, stone, challenge myself a little bit, and then added a little bit with threes on top, you know, making a series of them.
Great. Yeah, a number of us hula people, we know kupe'es really well. In fact, we don't even call them kupe'e. When we're gonna go holo holo, we call them click click.
Yeah,
you know, you know, the idea is if you say kupe'e, they're gonna hear and they're gonna jump off, and they're quite sensitive. You know, You know, all you need is somebody fall down, and it's a dramatic fall, and it comes with screams and gestures. Then you hear all these click, click, click,
Tick,
clicks,
tick,
and
tick,
they're
tick,
all
tick.
gone.
Gone. Yep.
So, yeah, that's a shared story that a number of us hula people have. Um, can you tell us about these people?
Ah, so I named the fern piece Ulu'ae. My friend Lehua helped me name the piece, and it's the give and take that's needed during growth, you know, ups and downs. And so it's a ko'i piece, first of all, strong, it's an adze that represents the kane. And then the small of the back, the curve, that's the female. And then they in turn make the foundation that raises the fern, you know. So very symbolic piece. And I the other piece that's backlit, my dad, he trowed net a lot, and he would always fix his net, and he actually had a
Mm.
green plastic one like that he always had in his throw net bag. And this last trip I had to New Zealand, I had all this green jade, and it looked ponamu, and it looked exactly like my dad's net. And I was missing him, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna carve me a net needle, and that's what that is. And it's a net needle that now I wear.
Okay. So isn't that interesting how you're you know, the fact that when you miss someone, you actually have the power to call that back, to
Yeah.
call that memory, and host it, so you don't go on missing them. You actually do something about it, and in
Mm-hmm.
the creation. And so that, you know, makes me think, is the tangible piece the important piece, or just a vehicle?
Yeah.
And that it is the memories, you know, it's that connection, is that you and your dad sitting in that one space,
Yeah.
you know, and having a conversation while your hands are working,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Wow, that's quite powerful. Okay, so before we go further, this next section, I'm going to be playing around with interpretation, because again, this art series is for the development of indigenous leadership, knowing our place in the universe, and knowing what we can do to keep that universe healthy. Not just the human universe, but the biological, the living, the breathing universe. And so, and the role that art has in it, and more importantly, the how we use interpretation to kind of percolate up certain kinds of emotions or memories or strengths we need through the art. So, but before we go on, Tip, do we have any questions? Where do I find the questions? Where did the questions go? I don't want to stop share, because then I'm going to. Do I look at the Q&A or notes? Speaker notes, not Q&A. Oh no, that was the wrong one.
I can
Um,
read the question, T.
okay, read the question, please.
Trina just asked what the blue wood was.
The blue wood was, okay.
Blue wood.
Let me get this going again. The blue wood.
It was before the jade. It was before
It
the
was
kupe'e, I believe.
before the jade. The blue wood.
Oh,
This piece here.
I think that one.
That, yeah, it's not blue. It's just
it's black. It's the lighting. It's black. It's
like
uhi
this.
uhi. It's almost extinct. We cannot sell it legally. There's very few of them left alive. I call it black gold. It is precious, precious, precious. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
just a little bit left. You know, it's hard to find now.
Okay.
Hopefully, we'll be
Trina,
planting more.
Trina, you got to put on your glasses, girl. The bug are black, not blue. Okay. Any other questions?
There's one that says, is there a process you go through to attain kawila or uhi uhi?
Yeah, you can go to DLNR to the state forestry, and you go through this permitting process. and you have to say how much you need, what you use it for, and then they actually give it to you, but with stipulations though, you know. But yeah, you can go to Forestry and Wildlife and obtain the permit there.
Mahalo. Those are all the questions posted
Those are
as
all
of
the
now.
questions.
Yes.
Okay, mahalo. So let's just run through this this piece called paha'oha'o. This word paha'oha'o is a word that's kind of stood out to me, or continues to stick out whenever we do the kumulipo, the creation, the birth of the universe, and the creation chant, and it means a number of things, and it's attached to the phrase haumea kino paha'oha'o, meaning haumea of the transfigured bodies or the transformed bodies. Now, what that means to us today in 2020, more importantly, what it means for people that are, for the communities that are developing indigenous leadership, and then also through the arts, using the arts as a contribution to this leadership. You know, it comes in many forms. Transformation comes in many forms. Journeys come in many forms. Inspiration come in many forms. What this word reminds me of is, you know, we have a saying, we have 40,000 gods. It's a reality, it's real. And what it means is, you know, we don't go to a church and then there's 40,000 people on an altar. It's a whole different way of looking at our universe. It means that we have a limitless way of looking at reality, interpreting reality, defining reality. And that if one is not working for us, then we have opportunities to see it from a different angle. So this paha'oha'o, you know, as it speaks to transformation, you know, there are many ways of transforming, and sometimes it's from the family. And then as families begin to grow or sometimes crumble, then families are redefined by communities such as Ho'ea, such as halau hula, such as canoe paddling, you know, and, you know, there's different definitions for family. And this idea of transfiguration, you know, there's all kinds of transformation, but transfiguration really is that kind of transformation that really puts us in a space of, you know, of heightened spirituality. And when I say spirituality, is not necessarily religion, but more the ability to know how we are one with the community we live in. And so all of this plays in the magic that we do. And again, art being the vehicle to elicit paha'oha'o. You know, when you pick up the art piece, you don't just look at it straight on, you turn it around, you turn it upside down. You know, there's different ways of looking at it because every angle will give you a different story. And we want to know as much stories as there is to know, because one story may not work for us. But if you just turn the object around, there could be another story that is right there in the same object that means something to us. So here's the power of paha'oha'o. Now, if you don't know, Beau is also a photographer, and his works are quite kind of you know, you look at them and it just kinds of you know, it makes you stop and think. You know, and sometimes for me, you know, it elicits particular emotional responses. And I'm finding out that I'm looking at the photos you sent me, Beau, that there always seems to be a theme that I see in a number of them is a single item in a huge landscape. Now, let me interpret that, you know, as it relates to leadership. Now, I don't know why you elected to do that, but when I'm looking at this, now it's my turn it's my story. It's now mirroring an image. And of all the times I appear lonesome, alone, how many leaders out there in the community, whether you're family leaders or you're in a profession and you lead, or you're cultural leaders, that there's a strong sense of being alone. You know, you could be surrounded by thousands of people, but there are times when you just feel like you're alone. But this image is quite empowering, you see, because you have this one hina hina here, but look at all of the hina hina in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know, the images on the left or on my right, I guess that's your hand, Beau. Are those your hands that you're holding up?
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know what the inspiration was, but part of what we do is teaching our students not to have the answers, but to ask the questions or to begin to interpret. So I like to play with my students. I like to say, okay, if I were to hand you one of these two items, because you're gonna have a role in leading the nation in saving the mountain or cleaning the ocean or or food sovereignty, and you're gonna head into there's gonna be 1,000 people there, and you're gonna have to offer up this chant, and I'm gonna hand you this to you, fully knowing that with this thing that you're gonna wear is just a physical image of this photo right here with the hina hina, this night photo with all the billions of stars. This whole landscape is now encoded in that piece you're gonna wear. How is that gonna affect your space, your holding space, your leadership? How is that gonna affect your spirit? Okay, I do this often with my students. Sometimes I put them in my own ahu. I share my own ritual wear with them. And I say, now I had this for 20 years. It comes with all these stories. Now I'm going to give it to you. How does that make you feel? How does that affect you? Okay? No answers. But what we need to get away from is, wow, this is beautiful. I want it. I want to wear it. I'm going to look so good in it. That's not bad, but it's limiting. The power comes from knowing that there's a whole universe in this one piece. And that when you wear it, that idea of wearing it in ritual is to trigger that memory that you are part of this whole universe and you're not standing alone. Okay? Here's another image. So that's play number one. I would like for you to think again, if somebody was to hand you this with the story that there's a whole universe in these creations, how would you feel? How would you react? Beau, you want to say anything before we move on to the next one?
Just the stone carvings on the right. So the blue you see is labradorite, and that's the English name. But I don't recall the indigenous name, but the indigenous people way up north believe that wherever the northern lights touch, this stone is created.
Wow.
So it really holds light, a lot of light, same as the stars. So yeah, when people wear that, it's like it just radiates,
Yeah. So that's the interesting thing is because Beau just sent me like tons of images and then he says, oh, just take the ones that speak to you. I'm like, yeah, you're killing me. All of them speak to me. But I've just paired them together without too much thought, just paired them together because it's part of interpreting, to give two unlike things and say to the student, create a narrative. Where is the intersection? I'm not going to tell you how it intersects. You tell me how it intersects. And then to find out that it is associated with the Northern Lights. And, that's a beautiful awakening too. This piece here, when I just saw this image on the right, you have these 3 color gradations. They're all intersecting. And then you have that lonely tree. I don't know if it's lonely. It might be just quite happy, but I'm interpreting it as lonely. When I see this, it reminds me of sometimes that's how I feel. But, I actually like being alone. I'm one of those people that love to be alone, and I can't be around a lot of people too much for too long. But you see these lines here? I paired it with this. I should have asked, what is this? I'm just only looking at the lashing. And I'm seeing that there is a relationship. So if I was to hand this to you, if you were in our discussion, I say, can you tell me why were these two paired? Interpret, give me a story, create a story. Why were they paired? What do they mean? And how could they assist you in leadership? How could that meaning assist you in leading the community to a stronger, self-determining reality? And I leave you an opportunity to create the story. You know, where would your story begin? Beau, can you tell us, share with us a little bit about these two images?
Yeah, so the reason why I like the photograph of the tree is it's it's funny that you picked the two, because the lashing piece I made at an artist collaboration with my brother at Thai Lakes. We needed to do a self-portrait, and that's what I came up with. That's my self-portrait. And then on the right, that's a tree that I love because there's lines and everything is straight. But I like to be different. I like to stand out. I don't like to be conformed. You know, I don't. So there's the lines, and then there's me, right? And same with my work. You'll see, you know, everything is straight, and then you'll see something in a curve, and that's me. Both of them, that's me. That's why that tree caught my eye, because that's exactly what I would be if I was a tree. I wouldn't be straight.
You know, it reminds me of, you know, I'm kind of allergic to being like everybody else. And sometimes growing up as a child, you know, because I was highly independent and I was a loner, sometimes you get bullied because you're isolated, you know. But I had all my stars were twinkling in my head. I could stay in the mountains for a long time by myself or by the ocean. Nobody knew where I went. Always had my conversations. Now, how did that act out as I was growing up? And in hula, you know, they like to, you do the same choreography, you have the same costume. But it was funny because there's this one hula teacher that always, she kept her good eye on me, Auntie Nalani. My pa'u, there was always something different about my pa'u. I always did a special flap. And sometimes I did it like in the back so she wouldn't see, or I do it in the front, but something about I couldn't be exactly like someone else. I don't know why that is. And maybe some of you, this is an echo to you. And for some of you, you know, conforming is not a bad thing. It just doesn't work for some people. And so this image is quite strong. This lashing, I want you to, if you don't know, you know, we use the word hoa or to ka hoa, to lash. If you have a Hawaiian dictionary with you, you might want to look up what that word hoa means, or to ka hoa, to lash, because then it will give you a deeper understanding of why lashing is not just functional, but it has a psychological contribution too. And a weak lashing is not a good metaphor. But a lashing that is non-flexible, that too, you know, an one that is too hard and doesn't allow for some breathing, then that too can be quite dangerous. So you can look up the word lashing. But you know, if I were to give my students these two images, that's what I would tell them. Interpret this story. It's not Bojack's story anymore. This image is now eliciting your story. No, I didn't know that was a portrait of yourself. This is a lashing. So, you know, the idea is, how is that me? Well, when I first saw that, I was thinking, you know, I'm a little bit vain, just slightly. It's a harmless vanity. But I was thinking, wow, that would make a nice girdle for me. As I get older, I'm thinking girdle, a lashing piece, but it's beautiful.
Thank
It's
you.
just lashing. That lashing is just, you know, it's lashing. And you look at it, you go, you can stare at it for a long time. Yeah, so great.
Thank you.
This piece here. So again, you're the student, people, and I'm going to say, okay, here you are. So-and-so is visiting our college, and you're going to have to offer up this chant. You've never chanted before. in the community, but I've trained you for 2 years, and you're not gonna be a closet chanter. You got to chant for your community. And but here, I'm gonna give you this item here, and it's gonna give you the strength you need. This item, the meaning behind this item, you can find within this photo here. Now you go and figure out what the meaning is. And what do you think the meaning is? You know, I like the circle of it. As I put the circle and the lava circles together, I'm gonna say, okay, but there's a whole lot more. When you look at it really good, there's a hook, there's a lashing, there's imagery made by our ancestors. The sun is either going down or coming up. It's at a liminal space where the liquid meets the hard, where the ocean meets the land. The sky is there, there's fire in the sky reflecting on the earth. We can go on and on and on this. But the point is, don't just stop looking at it and say, oh, fish hook, I want to wear it. The idea is, why do you want to wear it? Why do you need a hook? What is the function of a hook? And by wearing the hook, you know, in the 70s, in the 80s, people started to wear hooks. And some of the old tutus started freaking out because the hooks was meant to capture something. And when you put a hook on yourself, they weren't sure if that was inviting some self-harm. You know, it took a while for our old people to accept that the hooks were now not just about capturing fish, but it was about capturing something, perhaps in our bodies, that we need to fish back up, bring into consciousness. So, Beau, can you share with us your story behind these two images?
So both of them very special to me. So the fish hook, when I was at Ho'ea, there was a kupuna came in. I don't even remember his name. I don't think he even gave me his name, but he seeked me out. I was carving probably one of my bracelets, and he brought me stone. And he says, this is for you. And I said, I don't carve stone. He says, oh, but you will. And he said that everyone wants the stone from Mauna Kea. This stone is from Mauna Loa. So that's a very special stone. And then the petroglyph, actually it's covered under 3 foot of sand year round. And I've only found this petroglyph 3 times. I go back constantly. In fact, that photo reminds me I better go and look. Whenever the big surf comes in, it gets cleared. So I photographed it one night, come back the next day, and it's covered again. So that's a pretty special petroglyph for me to capture.
So a couple of things. You know, let's take this opportunity. You know, we're celebrating the skill and the story that Beau is, but you know, but going beyond just, you know, his story and what he's able to produce, but using that as a platform to jump into a deeper personal discussion with yourself in service to community, with yourself in service to your family, with yourself in service to yourself. See, that's one thing about leadership. Sometimes we get lost in servicing everyone else, and when the sun sets, we realize we didn't make opportunity for some of the fish to come back. We fed the entire world, but we didn't teach the world to feed us also, to include us in the feeding. So, you know, when I look at this, and then now it's from Mauna Loa. If you know anything about Mauna Loa, what I know immediately about Mauna Loa is that was the destination of Pele for people that relate to Pele Honua Mea, the fire goddess who came from Kahiki, from the horizon. Mai kahiki ka wahine o Pele mai ka aina I pola pola mai ka puno hu ula akane mai ke o lapi kala ni mai ka o pola pa kahiki. That's a chant that tells us that she left the horizon and the horizon was just glowing with fire. And she went on her journey very much like Beau and met a whole number of people. I'm sure she met her Anne. and she met all, and she met a number of people along the way. Um, but then she settled in Mauna Loa. She arrived there. And so to look at this hook, knowing that that's Mauna Loa, if you were to wear it, Mauna Loa, that entire story of Pele is on your body now. How is that going to assist you in leadership? That's quite empowering to know. The versus, oh, this is just a stone. Yes, it's a sacred stone. All stone is sacred. But the fact that this particular stone is from Mauna Loa, and it was given by this man, this elderly man, and which makes it more magical. We didn't know his name. It's like, Beau, your story is sounding more like Lord of the Rings or something. You're meeting all these, but you and myself are not the only ones that have similar storylines. This kind of storyline is worldwide. People of all colors and races have these journey stories where they meet strangers, and strangers provide them with what they need before they even know they need it. And so that person, the anomaly is, you don't know this person, so you don't know who to thank. But sometimes it's not necessary. It's just knowing that this spirit guide provided you with this pohaku from Mauna Loa. And this pohaku is now a hook, and it's now lashed. And the function of the hook is huge in at least people that live near the ocean and that fishes from the ocean. So go and create your own storyline. Now this petroglyph is even more meaningful, because if you're not there at the right time, you'll never see it, and you could live there all your life. So it's those opportunities where sometimes everybody's there and nobody's seeing it, but there's this one grandchild that sees something there that nobody else has ever seen. We will all have that grandchild. There will always be a special child in your community, whether in your halau, your canoe paddling club, your church. That child, all children are precious, but then you'll have this one child that just is paha'o. Their eyes are bewildered. They see things different. They interpret things different. And oftentimes they're loners. And they begin to have conversations. We all have them. Yeah, it's great that our children know how to walk in a straight row. But you see, we have 40,000 gods. That means our children should be able to walk in straight row, curvy rows, very rigid row. Not one way. Teach our children to walk many ways, because when you're hunting, you got to know how to climb. You got to know how to walk many ways. When you're swimming, you got to know how to swim in many oceans. And so, look for that child. Don't neglect that child. Give that child. The child is waiting for you. Maybe you're that unnamed person that has something that child needs. That's the way magic continues. Okay. Okay. Now. Whoo. So a few months ago, a number of us, there were a couple of thousand of us, were on the mountain on Mauna Kea, segueing from Mauna Loa to Mauna Kea. And we're up against odds. But there was a definite spiritual strength by those gathered, Indigenous and allies alike. Indigenous worldwide were there. And oftentimes these young people were given leadership roles. And I'm looking at this pounamu on my left, which is it's a pohaku, I guess. And then you have this delicate fern. What if I tell you that every person that stood up there, whether young, because sometimes there are young kids offering a chant. They've only chanted in their charter schools, and now they're up on a mauna, freezing. There's police, and there's all kinds of people there, all kinds of security, and then there's thousands of other people there, literally. And this one child will get up and offer this chant. a chant he learned in school or she learned in school, but now she's offering that chant to the nation. From her inner universe, she's giving her energy. What if I tell you that child was both a hard substance, but also a fern shoot, delicate? Some fern shoots you can't touch because once you touch it, they'll wither. That's how delicate they are. But what if I tell you that perhaps some of the older people, the very seasoned warriors, were not too different from the young children that came from the charter schools, that they too were both hard and firm, but also vulnerable and delicate. So when I'm looking at these two images, I put them together. I had no clue that the piece on the left and the right, they correspond. But I think what is an important piece is oftentimes when we look at leaders, we see only the piece on the hard substance, the force, the verve. But we don't know that sometimes behind a very strong leader is a delicate fern shoot. And we have to protect them. We have to protect that child, because if that fern shoot is tampered with, it may never ever unfurl. Okay, so think about that, because that's us as a mother, as a grandmother. We're both people are so willing to create relationships based on our hard personality, but they don't know behind that hardness is a vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And vice versa. Oftentimes people project their vulnerabilities and they have a hard life because of it. But somewhere in there is some hard substance that we just got to bring forward, and the arts can do that. Please share with us, Beau, the story behind these two images.
Well, you guys heard about that's the same Ponamu piece about the fern shoots, right? But the photograph of the fern shoot, I took several photos, but I wanted to include the full-grown fern in the background. They're just like our kupuna. They're there, you feel them, but they let you be, right? You know they're there. And as we grow, you know that you can feel them, you know they're there. And that's what I wanted to portray in that photograph, was the kupuna in the background, allowing the fern to grow, supporting,
And at that point, when we stand and that the kupuna is there, and some people say, well, that's, we don't see them, they're not there, but we know they're there because we're not only using our eyes. There's, it's paha'o again. Now it's not just looking through a myopic scope, one lens. We're looking at this world. And so to see the fern, all you have to do is look at the fern and you know that that fern represents an entire forest system. And that fern contributes huge to the canopies of the forest. Oftentimes a delicate fern becomes the understory or the umbrella to protect some of the fresh seeds that need a little bit more nurture before they begin to break rock and bloom. So yeah, the next time you see this leader in your family, look at them and see if you can project these two images in them, and I think you begin to see them differently. That behind the hard surface is a delicate person, and oftentimes behind the delicate person is a force to reckon with. And sometimes we forget that because our world tells us we got to be either one or the other. But in Hawaii, we can be all of it. Isn't that a beautiful thing? Okay, same thing here. Why don't we begin? Why don't you tell us the story behind these two images, please, Beau?
So the Milky Way image that I took of the Hina Hina was this night. This is sunset on the Mauna. It was getting cold, But it was just so beautiful. If everyone should go up there and witness sunset on the Mauna, especially next to the Silver Swords. You know, that was my first time, and it's not going to be my last. It's just wonderful up there. Cold, but wonderful. And then again, my adornments that I made at Hoea, really special. Those two.
So if I were to, again, fully knowing, you know, the little bit of story that he shared with us, if I were to say, here's this is what you're going to need to help define your next steps in your journey. You know, that's a great thing with mythology. They don't always spell it out. You have to have a mystery. We love mystery. If we're told the answers, and that's like sometimes the university system don't work, or for some of us, because, you know, you're just gauged to finding answers. No mystery. We need the mystery. We need to know that behind the rock, our ancestor is awaiting us. Or maybe our ancestor is the rock. We need to know that when we look at the moon, and we can't touch the moon, but the moonlight touches us, but we can touch the hina hina, and that's a plant form of the moon. So in being in close proximity to the hina hina, I am right in the face of the moon. How empowering is that, knowing that the ancestor, the moon, hina hina, is not so distant, but she's right there. Cold, but nonetheless right there, the hina hina. And then, so, you know, sometimes we don't need to have answers for our kids. However we define our kids, our students. Sometimes we need a mystery. Give them a mystery. Give them something to wrap their brains around. I have many moments in my life when this one hula teacher of mine would randomly say something, you know, just like, where did she pull that from? Made no sense to me at the time. And it took me 20 years lingering on that finally it opened up. I went, whoa, this is what it means. And then the big whoa is, whoa, why did she give it to me? And so I'm figuring out, why was I given these opportunities? And I think that's what's going to happen with Beau his entire life. He's going to be asking, why was he given this stone from Mauna Loa? Even when he told the person, I don't do that. Yeah, the magic of it all. I think this might be the last slide. When I saw this photo, it spoke volumes to me, because of the crag, you know, the cragginess of it all. I don't see any leaves on the tree, so I'm not sure if the tree is going into its next phase of life. But as I'm getting older, my mind is lingering on stuff like this, because I have to ask the question, have I done enough for my own people? Have I left enough seeds for my own people? Have I left the best kinds of seeds, not bitter seeds? In my prime, did I create shelter for my community? Did I feed my community? Did I take care of that rascal child? Did I not neglect the odd child? The child that the naggy. I had a cousin, we call him Dago. Oh my God, he came out of the womb nagging. Nobody could deal with him. And for some reason, I love that. Whenever he and I had him since he was an infant, you know, he's my cousin, and we just connected. And he was just a special person once he was stopped nagging. He's an adult now. I suspect he still nags. But, you know, so when I'm looking at this, knowing, did I do enough? And I'm looking at all those stars, knowing that those stars are our ancestors. They're not just twinkling up there. They're our ancestors. I'm accountable. They know what I do. Now, this, when you look at this story, you might have a whole different relationship to it, but I'm just sharing with you that when I see this, it's powerful. And that You know, if the tree had leaves, that would tell me that would I would respond differently. But it looks like it's now becoming detritus for the world around it. And what a beautiful opportunity to become detritus for the world around us if we've spent our physical lives servicing well and servicing and being part of that service, being happy about it. And then this bracelet here, this cuff, obviously they're not from the same tree, but that wood, the cuff came from a living entity. It came from a tree, it came from a fossil, and now it's living on you. Isn't that something great to think about? So it's not like, oh, look, I'm looking nice. I'm gonna go to the event, and I'm gonna be looking, oh, now Hoko Hano Hano Award, winner with all my indigenous array on. That's not a bad thing. It's great. But sometimes to just hold that cuff in the hand and say thank you. Thank you for the honor of living on my body. Allow my body to give you life. And knowing that that cup will go to a grandchild, whether yours or somebody else's, that cup will outlive us. This is our physical body. That's the magic we're talking about. And I leave that with you. So when you find yourself on the lonely slopes alone and the time is right, think about these things. That's where leadership is. It's not just about memorizing the 10 steps toward leadership. It's always an inner dialogue. Imua, this is his name. I never knew his name was Imua until I started looking at all the photos. I only knew him as Bojaki. I used to think, oh, that's a rock star name. But then there's an Imua in there.
Yeah.
Imua, can you tell us what it means and what is it doing to you? What is it? How does it interest? How is this name guiding you, if anything?
Well, first of all, it means to forward progress or remain in forward progress. My mom, till today, says she wish she named all her kids Imua. But I was called Imua only by my Hawaiian grandma, and then my sixth grade, we had this kumu collier, and she would come in polyester pants, different color. It was either orange top, blue bottom, with her lauhala papali and with her ukulele. And I was mischievous, and sometimes she would give me the eyes, but when she was upset, she would call me Imua. And she always got my attention with Imua. She knew that was my Hawaiian name, and that's the only name she called me. And one day we were at the post office, my dad and I, and we ran into her. And I said, oh no, here we go. She's gonna say that I'm Kalohe. And so my dad asked how was I in class? And she says that I was the best student. And she winked at me. And from that moment on, I knew I had to be good because she had my back. If he found out that I was Kalohe, I would have got it, right? And so after that, I always looked to her I always tried hard in her class. Whatever she did, it was only Fridays, a good portion of the Friday that she would come in. And she paid attention to me, but she kind of put me on the side and never really acknowledged me after that. In what I did. And then years passed, and then actually it was at Ho'ea. I remember she came to me in my dreams one night. Same polyester, smile, red lipstick. And I walked, and she was on this rocking chair in my dream. And she called me Imua. And I said, yes, Kumu. And she told me, mai ka'i no. And I cried, and I woke up and I cried, so that name Imua really means a lot to me, Bojack everybody knows me as Bojack, but people that were really, really dear to me, my grandma, her, you know, they call me Imua, and that's so yeah, that's my name. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And the work that you're doing is interesting how when we look at your name and the work that you're doing, there is a lot of forward progress. And it's interesting how forward progress doesn't necessarily mean you forget the past. Again, in the indigenous world life, reality is you always bring that past informs us. So like that fern shoot, you have that blurred out background of the matured ferns, and they're always pushing forward, you know, the younger shoots. And that is comforting to know that Imua, there is a beginning space, and you move, and that's the measure. And then you measure and you measure. So for the rest of your life, until you change your name, you'll be growing. That's always, yeah. So, you know, this last image, you know, there's the lashing. There's obviously I'm not sure this is one material, and this looks like wood, but I elected to use this as the endings because you can see very intimately his grooves in his fingers, and similar to the grooves you find in wood, the grooves you find in lashing, the grooves you find in the bone, or I'm not sure what that is, the grooves you find in you know, in the hina hina, you know, that behind these pieces is a human being. Behind the piece is in this case, there's a human being who had a mentor who wore polyester and red lipstick. Whoa. You know, they come in all forms. And there's a human being. And so I think that sometimes we begin to look at the object, and we tend to forget that behind the object is a human being and is a story. So, you know, if you have to leave, leave. Hopefully this Mōkaulele we can continue next next year. This is a great, you know, time to come together, and we need this kind of talking. But I don't know, we might get furloughed, so that's a different kind of discussion. So we might be doing all kinds of art because we're going to be furloughed. But
Yeah.
if you can stay, if you need to stay a little bit behind and ask your questions, that's also great. But before you do leave, I want to say mahalo to the University of Hawaii at Hilo for the Mōkaulele office, specifically Gilma Kuakane London, for making this happen, and making the opportunity and then telling me to make it happen. That's how it works. And then I want to mahalo Beau for, he could have said no. He could have been busy, politely busy. That's how. Sometimes got to be politely busy. But he said yes. I had no clue where we're going to head in this discussion. But there's something that we do trust, that whatever we call it, by doing this, we transform. And there's fleeting moments when we're actually transfigured, when we're not looking at the stars, but for a iota moment, where the star is looking down on the earth. And we can see ourselves in a larger landscape, a larger sphere. Our children need that. So let us be that tree. Let us be that kumu. Let's grow good seeds, shelter, food, nourishment. And so when it is our time to lay our head on the lava and return to the earth, you know, maybe that one child is going to be at the shoreline at the right time, and the waves will remove all the sand so they can see these memories as reflected in imagery. So thank you all for coming. Mostly thank you, Beau. And Beau, I want to thank, you know, we say we don't have, like you, I'm self-taught in a lot of things. I like that. I like to figure things out. But I also know that there are a lot of starry people in your body that sort of supported you all along. Mm-hmm. And in you doing this, a number of them now have a voice, and you're giving them a language. So mahalo for sharing that language with us.
Thank you.
You guys can
Thanks
stay behind.
me.
Yeah, you can stay behind if you and I'm gonna just stop this share, and we can go directly to so if you have any questions, how can I do this? Okay, and yeah, just ask the questions. Let me put my glasses on. Oh, we have 44. Tiffany, we have plenty of questions, Mary.
We we only have two questions. We have two questions.
Okay,
But
okay.
could you could you share your screen one more time and go back to the first Hina Hina frame?
The first Hina Hina frame. Okay,
Yeah.
let me go back. The first Hina Hina frame.
Because this
That would be the first Hina Hina
the
frame.
celestial one.
The Milky
The
Way.
the Milky
Yeah.
Way. Oh, that would be slide. Okay, not that one. Is it not that one? Okay. I'm sure there is another way of doing this.
That's okay.
Oh, I got. You're talking about the photography, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Back.
so that would back one.
Yeah,
Okay,
that
yeah.
one.
Oh, yeah. Okay, go for it.
Okay, so the question is twofold. First one says, when foretelling or visualizing a shot, is there a sense of ancestral direction? Is it a group effort or solitary?
Lots of times on this night, it wasn't solitary because it was so far out that myself and two of my good friends journeyed out together. And it's really far. But lots of times I'm out on that mountain by myself. Well, with my kupuna, I feel them there, but I'm up there to 11:30, 12 o'clock at night till my lens condenses. There's so much condensation that I have to leave, you know. And yes, it is cultural. You cannot help but to feel connected on that mauna next to the hina hina or next to the stones that they made into ads. You know, I mean, life is all around, even though it looks minimal, but there was so much life up there, you know. Yeah, it's very much cultural driven.
Okay, mahalo. T, can you go to the self-portrait frame?
Self-portrait frame. Okay, that's the lashing one.
I think to the right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, this question comes to us in this frame, and it says, does the symbolism or the mo'olelo of the piece ever evolve over time?
Yeah, it does. With this piece, I just gave myself freedom to do it. But when I first started off, I would go to my books and look at it, look at a particular lashing or a carving piece. That's how my kupuna did it. That's how my ancestors did it, and I should do it like them. But really, now I give myself the liberty to do my own, and hopefully people one day will look at that and do the same thing that I did for their work, you know? Yeah, so it definitely evolves. And I feel that I've evolved as well. You know, I mean, I wanted to make things, nice things, beautiful things. Now it's a part of my life. It's who I am. You know, it's in me. I can't deny it, you know? Whether I wanted to stop or not, I don't think I could.
I think this is where sometimes it becomes erroneous. Some people think that when we talk about indigenous anything, we're talking about a time capsule of events and the way we think. And so sometimes even our own family says, why are you going to get a degree in Hawaiian studies? You know, you've got to move forward. We've got to move forward. So the idea that anything traditional will lock us to the past, and that is farthest from the truth. The fact that, and I think hula has a great way of demonstrating that we inherit a lot of dances from our ancestors. Some of those dances are 200 years old. Some of those dances were done, at least one of those dances that we do is said to have been done on the heiau that was abolished in 1819. The people dancing that dance on the heiau in 1819 had a purpose for dancing that dance, and they had a reason for dancing it, and they did it. Now, we're in 2020. 2020 and we're still doing this dance, it's the same dance. Now we have different reasons. Our need to do that dance has evolved. And so evolution is part of the feature, is part of the in fact, if we don't evolve, we're actually gonna not make it. Evolution is it. We have to evolve, but we have to evolve in our own terms. That's also a variable. But and another thing with hula people, innovation is huge. And oftentimes living in our little indigenous world, you know, people will call you on it. What is that? Is that traditional or not? You know, and it's a good thing. Why are you doing that? That look kind of weird. You look like you're doing Las Vegas kind of showgirl kind of action. You know, okay, that granted. So what we have to do, and that's what we mean by having 40,000 gods, we have to be able to demonstrate our most conservative practices. And then it gives us the liberty to innovate. So if we're to ask Beau, show us a traditional, lashing, he'll be able to do that. Show us an innovative lashing, he'll be able to do that. Same with Tangaro. You know, I can do all of these great creations with cord, but I can also do the very conservative, because sometimes as indigenous people, we have to have the ability to prove ourselves, because we'll be called on it. And it's a good thing to be called on it, but it doesn't stop the innovation.
Yeah.
We got to grow.
So I received this grant from First Peoples Fund, and I needed to go to New Mexico for a workshop. I was there for 14 days. This was several years back. And the speaker that came and talked to us that day, it was 25 of us that received a fellowship grant. And he asked all of us before lunch what was traditional to us, right? And when we came back from lunch, we all had to stand up and answer the question. And people were saying, you know, my beads, this is how my ancestors did it, so this is traditional, you know. And when it came to my turn, he asked me what was traditional to me, and I said, traditional to me is our ability to adapt, because throughout time, our ancestors, all they did was adapt. Because they're making one thing out of a certain species and it's gone. They're not going to stop making that. They're going to adapt and make it. They're going to further that piece, you know, using other materials or, yeah. So he was floored. He says, "Wow, finally," you know. But yeah, it's the ability to adapt to me, for me anyway, you know.
Any other questions? This is a nice large group. Hi, look at all these people I'm seeing. Hi. I just. Any other questions? If you would like to have a discussion, you know, you can also put your email in the chat box, and or you know, however your contact, and if he's so moved, then he can contact you. But we're going to be closing. We're going to be bringing this discussion, just a discussion, to a close. And I think very much like Beau, I don't know if it's, you know, providing answers is a great thing, but I think we love the mystery. We love the intrigue of not always having the answers, or growing the answers as we mature and people come into our lives and leave, come in and out. Again, you all have homework. We're heading into finals week. And as a professor, I'm gonna just take my license. This is a non-tuition bearing opportunity, so Merry Christmas. But tomorrow, you know, think about that child that you were. Think about that time you were alone and your world was full of magic. And if you weren't that child, if your life, your childhood was just the opposite, was traumatic, your ancestors have never left you, even during those times. So homework number 1, say thank you to that child. Look in the mirror and say thank you. You've made it, you're here. And you're here having this discussion. Homework number 2, begin to identify, if you haven't already, who is that child? Who are you going to leave your tonga? Who are you going to leave your heirlooms to? I have one son. Oh my Lord! He says, "Dad, you're not going to wait for you die before we get stuff." I said, "No worry, buddy. You're not getting nothing." But in any case, because when we wear these things to ceremony, if there's 5,000 people at that ceremony, there are 5,000 narratives, 5,000 genealogies that are now going to be entering into that piece. And so 20 years of wearing a piece to a ceremony, putting your sweat in it, your fears, your strengths, your questions, your arrest, your liberation, that becomes a totem. By itself, it's not a totem. It's what we do with it. And so, yes, art and craft is a beautiful thing. Sometimes we need the surface entrance, but that's just a surface. There's something much more deeper than that. What is sand today could be a nice petroglyph tomorrow that is singing your name. So congratulations. 2020 is an unusual year. Be safe, be kind to yourselves. There's always an opportunity to lead. You don't have to know the greatest chance to lead. You just know that when it's your turn to stand with your story, not with somebody else's story. And we don't really care what color your skin is. We care that you have a good narrative that you can contribute to the needs of our community, the natural people living in the community, the mountains and the oceans and the heavens. So let's all contribute. There's a lot of stars in our bodies. Let's wake them up. But that's your homework. Say mahalo to your child self, your magic years, your trauma years. Identify the people in your community that reflect you, the thing that you like about yourself, and also that very rascal. But also say thank you in your heart to all of those people that gave you challenges, but also gave you the tools you needed to advance. Mahalo anui loa Beau. It's great to continue this narrative. The story of Hi'iaka and Kupoliopele was never meant to end. So once it was published, people think that's the ending of the story. No, the publishing was just to keep a memory alive should we get lazy and we forget it. But the story is to evolve. Every lava flow, the story evolves. So let's continue our creations. Let's continue our narrative. Ahui ho no kako. Okay,
Thank you for
Beau.
having me.
Yeah,
Aloha.
mahalo nui for sharing your story. Ahui ho. Bye-bye.
Ahui ho. Bye-bye. Aloha.